This video is sponsored by thingpenguin.com. Okay, recording is started. Mark Edge, is that okay with you?
Yes, it is.
It's Dave Ridley here from ridleyreport.com talking to Mark Edge from freetalklive.com. And we're New Hampshire liberty activists, and I want to go a little bit off topic today to talk about a liberty thing that's going on that's not New Hampshire. And that is, I guess we could call it the Coral Beach Project in Honduras. Am I referring to this correctly, Mark?
Right. Let's call it ZAs in Honduras generally. So I think you've really hit the mark in so much as we have to talk about several different things. Um, and let me get them as clear as I can right off the bat. So Honduras created special economic zones that they called ZAs. These are economic and educational development zones. Those are the letters. They're just in Spanish, and so they're mixed up. Basically, these places would allow for their own civil law, their own law enforcement to some extent, their own schools, all kinds of things that one could do, and you could live in them. They're private, residential, special economic zones, and that's what makes them unique. There's lots of special economic zones in the world. Few of them are private, and I guess very, very few can you live in, essentially. So that's what made them very special. One of them is called Prospera, and perhaps you've known about it. You can go to prospera.hn for Honduras, HN, and look at this place. It's basically sort of Silicon Valley, American, Westerner kind of thing. They have a organization of people called Vitalia that are concentrated on liberty and life extension, and they stay there most of the year. And so it's a very cool community. Another one is called Morazan, and that's at morazan.city if you want to check out that website. And that was a housing development for factories, Honduran like underwear factories. They make a lot of American T-shirts and underwear. Did until the Honduran government got too greedy with the American corporations, and they went to places like Bangladesh and Pakistan. So and then the last term I'd like to define is Coral Beach. Coral Beach is a resort that I bought some years ago. Put together some investors, and we bought it. And the idea was to create a ZA, but in, I think it was 2022, the communists got elected in Honduras because the National Party had a president who was a drug dealer. Now, it turns out the communists are drug dealers now too, but whatever. So the nationalistas lost and the communists won, and the communists, strangely, as much as they talk about liking human freedom, aren't that interested in people being able to make decisions about organizational models that are not ones that they like. So they've done everything within their power to get rid of the ZAs, these special zones. First, they got rid of the law, which said that they could exist. And that was, I think, in early 2023. It might be early 2022. I could have my years mixed up. But they got rid of them. And so everybody said, Zeddies are dead. And then, like the lawyers who were involved are like, no, there's 3 levels of legality to these ZAs. First, there's the legal level, then there's the constitutional level, and then there's the treaty level. And so the communists, not to be dissuaded, then paid off a bunch of, put in their own Supreme Court justices, and those justices, knowing where their bread was buttered, when the ZA thing came through, they basically said, yep, it was unconstitutional to start with. Now, that ruling is demonstrably unconstitutional, but what do you do when the Supreme Court says that something unconstitutional is constitutional and something that's unconstitutional is, whatever. They just say what they want to say. So then we're going to international arbitration. And the international arbitration will basically come back with an answer, likely, that says that Honduras owes money to the corporations that, own these zetes. However, the communists don't pay that. The government officials and the politicians who did this don't pay it. It's the Honduran people. And that's a real shame.
So right now, so you actually you bought Coral Beach?
Yes, one of me and some investors and I.
Wow. Uh the uh and right now a person from the United States, I mean if an average person in the United States wanted to just buy an apartment or rent an apartment at Coral Beach, how does that work?
Sure, Coral Beach is a resort, and we have a restaurant and 5 hotel rooms and an Airbnb house. So you can anybody can go find it. It's on a map. It's relatively easy to find. We're on the west side of Utila, or you can go to like booking.com. We're there also. The odd part is there's another hotel called Coral View there. So that's another thing. Or you can go to, I think it's coralbeach.com, coralbeachvillage.com.
So and Utila is an island on the eastern side of Honduras, correct?
It's on the northern side of Honduras.
Northern, okay, just to the north of
Yeah.
Honduras. Okay, I
Yeah,
was thinking
Honduras
northeast.
is that funny part of Central America that's it's like a table. It's flat on the top, and there's 3 islands above it. Utila is the westernmost island.
Okay. What's the size of
Yeah,
Utila? How big is it?
coralbeachvillage.com. Yes.
Okay.
What's the size of what?
How big is Utila Island?
Probably 7 to 10 miles side to side. It's sort of almond shaped.
And how many square miles or square acres is Coral Beach?
Coral Beach is 100 acres.
Okay. And it's
It's a
just
good size.
it's basically 5 hotel rooms.
Yeah, it's just we didn't have I yeah we didn't have very many hotel rooms to start, and honestly, it's the restaurant that pays the bills around there. Everybody comes to the restaurant, Neptune's, for whatever reason. The parties are to be had in town, and we are out of town, which is sort of one of the reasons I wanted. I mean, I wanted a housing development for libertarians to start with, and obviously we don't want to be right in the smack dab middle of town for that. Um, but yeah, so is it failed? It is if you were looking for ZAs. But the land still exists, and we're still there and still providing service, building houses and all that.
Well, it's considered not within a Zeta currently,
It is not within a ZA.
and that's
It never
because
was.
of
We never the ZA process was undermined before we ever got to start doing that.
and that's because the communist government came in and undid 2 layers of legality on Zetas.
Correct.
Okay. Uh, and so you just kind of exist within the Honduran system, correct?
Yeah, I mean, like any other resort exists, we exist.
So,
And that's specifically about Coral Beach. Now, I can answer all kinds of questions about Prospera and Morazan also. I'm very closely involved with Morazan and understand what's going on there.
so, why would a person feel like they're going to get more freedom inside a communist system with no real Zeta protection in that spot?
In which one? Are we talking about Coral Beach?
At Coral Beach, yeah.
I don't think that one could presume that you're going to get whole bunches of more freedom. I think you will get some, in so much as the governments have, they have the laws that they write, they have their ability to enforce those laws, and they have their willingness to enforce those laws. The Honduran government in Tegucigalpa doesn't have a lot of ability to enforce their laws way out on Utila, many, um, hundreds of miles or whatever it is from them. They just don't have the reach and the will to do so. So largely the western side of Utila is, I mean, we don't have cops that come there regularly. Rarely do the police even show up. We just kind of do our thing. There's about, call it 75 to 100 homes. Almost all are owned by Westerners, either North Americans, Canada, and there's some Europeans. And we just go about our business, day to day life, looking at the waves roll in and enjoying the sunsets and all that good stuff. And, in town, yeah, they have police stations in town, but you have to take a boat all the way across the lagoon, and the police just never come our way.
So how I have heard that um, folks in Latin America tend to be they're not as good at prepping as folks in the United States, and um, how I don't know survival friendly would you say Utila is or prepper friendly it is, in the event of a general world crisis.
I would say that you would probably need to prep for that. So somebody who came there would need to get a lot or work with somebody who has one, like Coral Beach, and plant some crops and those sorts of things. If the first place to start's squash. You can survive on the stuff, and boy, is it plentiful at certain times of year. And then other things. There's certainly a lot of fishing that goes on. If you were in a total world collapse, people would be concerned less with, oh, this species or that species. Generally, if I talk to people, I recommend pelagic fish for sustainability and to stay away from reef fish. But, you know, on an island like this, they're actually probably, to some extent, more ready for a catastrophe because life's been a catastrophe up until very recently on this island.
So it's kind of an area where things have been getting, you could say they've been getting better rapidly for 20 or 30 years, or
Yeah, they have been. The crops that they used to grow, they really don't grow them anymore because agriculture needs cheap land, and everybody wants to be on islands right now for whatever reason. So basically, they've turned from a agricultural and fishing society to a tourist-based society in the last few decades.
so the growing the grow arable land on the island has sort of gone fallow, or
Yeah, generally, you'd have to, find the right crops, which I know bananas grew very well at one point, and sugarcane grew very well. I wouldn't grow sugarcane for survival, but it was a big crop on the island at one point. The
what is
island used to have a few hundred people on it. Now it has a few thousand. So it's 10 times more people, and they just can't grow the food that it would take to feed those folks.
hmm. So I've heard that Central America has been in sort of a boom. It was I guess it was kind of in a boom in the 2005 era, but would you say that's continued all the way up to the present?
I don't know what the boom is precisely, what they're referring to, but it, I mean, it's civilization, right? Like, I mean, if you're talking about cities in Central America, yeah, there you can have everything in Central America. You can have everything on the island of Utila that you currently have in the United States, except it takes longer for Amazon deliveries to get there. I mean, that's literally the difference. When I show up, I always bring a few dozen um, Dunkin' Donuts. There's one on the mainland. There's not one on the island. They have no chains on the island. They have no cars on the island. So when I come, I bring some donuts, and everybody's always happy to have them.
When you
It's a
say
special
no
treat.
cars, do you mean literally there's not a single vehicle on the island that runs
So
on a motor?
The time versus the time that I got there versus now, I have to get more and more specific as to what I mean when I say car, because now they have these sort of single seater enclosed golf cart things that look a lot like a car. But you can decide what those things are and what they're not. But on the island, they have about a small handful of trucks, pickup trucks, that do work. They have to, haul blocks around and stuff like that. And it's difficult. These roads aren't made for cars. They're made for bicycles and motor scooters and golf carts and things like that. So on the western shore, there's, some people have brought like a pickup truck or something just for show, but there isn't much you can do with it. There's one road on the western shore. It's maybe 5 miles long, and it goes from, the point of where the lagoon is, and I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but all the way down till the to the canal, and that's it. I mean, there's not much room for those sorts of things. They have tuk-tuks, they have scooters, they have those kind of things. They don't have passenger cars.
What would you say is the degree of support, that local people have for these sort of long-term tourists or expats?
I think that the locals know very well that the tourists butter their bread. They have never been anything but kind. I've never even heard an anti-tourist sentiment on the island. Um, yeah, just haven't heard anything. I guess the only thing I've heard is that tourists drive up demand for consumables that come in plastics and other disposable garbage, and thus the tourists are responsible for the garbage that the locals do not properly dispose of because they've sold the whatever the came in that container to a tourist. That's the most ridiculous claim about tourists I've ever heard.
Is how much you hop in a boat, you drive it to the next island. Uh, is there any piracy?
Ah, that's an interesting question. No, is the short answer. You're rarely between the islands. You're rarely outside of the view of the islands themselves. One island can't see the other except on the clearest of days at some height. But maybe I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen Roatan from Utila or vice versa, but I have taken the ferry from Roatan to Utila several times, and there's not much as far as piracy goes. And you don't need a boat. I mean, I've never taken a private boat like a I don't know how to describe it, but I've never taken another person's boat like from one island to the other. I've always taken the ferry. It's $30 to go from Utila to Roatan, or Utila to the mainland, which is called La Ceiba. It's a type of tree.
Uh, and what would you say is the level of gun freedom in the area, and how difficult is it to obtain firearms?
This is an it is going to be very difficult for an American audience to understand. No one has any interest in guns there. Pretty much every one of the houses on the South Shore has a gun, but nobody carries them. There's no gun culture. People aren't, packing like Magnum PI with a Hawaiian shirt and, a pistol or something like that. Simply not done. Um, you know, I mean, I've talked to many, many people who are just think their guns are great, but they just don't take them out of the house. Now, if a raccoon is seen, things are different. The raccoons are invasive, and there's a bounty for them.
That sounds workable for a person who wants to live there with that kind of freedom. Um, let's see.
I don't know how you'd transport guns there. I
So
don't. I
so
don't
they're
know.
they're all in the houses, but how do they get there?
That's a good question. I know there are state gun stores in Honduras, and that you're not supposed to bring guns over the border. I the houses are all owned by corporations. Corporations can own guns, and that's how they're bought. So you can probably go get, say, a 1911 or a Chinese-made shotgun. They're relatively inexpensive, as I understand it. They're like $300. You can get like a Chinese-made shotgun and on the mainland, then bring it back and put it in your house, and it's owned by the corporation that owns your house, not by you, the foreigner.
And I can't remember what I was going to ask. Oh yeah, speaking of expense and how much things cost, you you had given what does it generally cost to rent there? Does it cost a lot less to live there than it does in the United States, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think you can get a rental for between $1,000 and $2,000 on the island of Utila. Obviously, the resort, Coral Beach, it's going to be a bit more, but we can probably work something out for you if you wanted to stay the season in one of our bungalows, and you don't need all the services that come with a hotel room all the time, right? So, we don't have to send in a maid every day to make your bed or something like that. We can probably work something
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't think it would work for me personally, but it was close enough to being viable for me that I figured it probably is viable for a lot of people who are, just looking for a cheaper or more freedom-oriented life. Do you
Well, next time I go, you can stay at my house with me in on Coral Beach, and you don't have to pay for the rental of it all. You can just pay for the plane flight. Plane tickets were relatively inexpensive from Boston to San Pedro Sula, but I haven't looked in some time. With Spirit Airlines going into bankruptcy, I wouldn't make any claims about anything.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I appreciate that. Again, it's probably all not for me. But even visiting, like I don't ever really. It's complicated, but I don't like to travel much,
I know you don't.
and sometimes I will move places or whatnot. But it's complicated. It's all I can do just to travel back and forth to Colorado Springs where my parents are. But
Which you do every year. Yes.
yeah, but there was something else I was going to ask you about the something related to. Oh yeah, you had mentioned when you talk about rents. So you mentioned a like a $1,500 roughly. That's the cost of an apartment per month.
Right. I would think that you get an apartment for, 12, 13, 1,500, something like that.
Yeah, okay. And then yeah, I'm asking for people in general because I just know that I keep bumping into free staters who are like, well, I'd love to be but I'm going to be in Honduras, So I know there's stuff that's
Mhm.
going on that's attracting even free staters, and those are people who live in the freest part of the United States. Usually they live in New Hampshire. So I just know there's something going on
Yeah,
down there, and I
I'd love
would.
to make some comparisons on that. So I have many times stated that New Hampshire is the freest state in the United States, and I would claim that it's going to get freer, in so much as it will be as free as a state can be. I am not of the opinion that it will ever secede, nor should it. Federations seem to be the direction that states are going, and the United States government has been historically pretty bitter when anybody wants to leave their particular union, and that means that there will be much suffering in New Hampshire if they do leave. But I do think that New Hampshire will be as free as a state can be, which isn't bad. I will say that I think that Saipan, which is the U.S. Marianas, is the freest place in the United States. But boy, oh boy, is it remote. And it's difficult to, um, you can't just go to Saipan and then leave when you want and those kind of things. The plane tickets are rather expensive. They can be as much as $2,000 round trip. Um, and then when I think about the freest places on Earth, this question gets very difficult because the answer was Morazan and Prospera some months ago, but I wouldn't make that claim now, not with the Honduran government's, the Supreme Court ruling that recently came out. I'm working with people to try to come up with some other private, residential, special economic zones, because I think this is the direction that things will go. If you really want, say, what I like to call a free private city. If you read Titus Gable's book, Free Private Cities, I think this is the real direction of freedom in the future. Not top down. It's going to come sort of bottom up, where people get together in a very close area, probably not in a expensive country, not a Western country. It's not going to be within a few feet of a Walmart. You know, you're probably not going to get Amazon deliveries wherever you do your first free private city, and that they just have to sort of rough it and make and show that these ideas work, and then all the good things will come.
Hmm. Well, that didn't work in Liberland, and there
I
was
just
another.
looked at airfares from Boston to San Pedro Sula are at 270 round trip on Spirit Airlines, and this is February the 12th through February the 19th. I just
Oh,
picked a
that's
random time of
really,
several of them.
yeah, that's impressive. I mean, that's only marginally more than that's about the same as what it goes for, Boston to Colorado Springs.
Yep, it's pretty cheap.
Very nice. Well,
You were going to say about yep.
I was going to say yet another thing that I forgot.
Just talking about the freedom of different jurisdictions and the possibilities and things like that.
Yeah. Uh, well, it's almost too early for me to ask this, but what can you think of that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Sure. Give me 1 second. When do you think, when do I think one of these freedom projects is going to be successful? Because I would declare Zedes at this point, if not unsuccessful, teetering on the brink of unsuccessful. Um, uh, Massimo Mazzone, pardon me if pardon my Italian, in his speech to the Liberty in Our Lifetime audience, gave the chances, Zede's chances somewhere in the range of 15%, 1-5. And he said, if this happens, this happens, and this happens, and this sort of made a cascade of things that could go right, and what could, and how that would work out. But, and he assigned percentage chances of those things occurring. And I don't think he's too far off. I would give a slightly higher chance. Maybe we could go as high as 20 or maybe even 25% chance that Zedes are return after the communists are kicked out, and almost certainly will be in 2025. Well, actually, they don't take office till 2026, but nonetheless, um, then some good things could happen. But those that are in this realm of looking for private, residential, special economic zones and creating them, and negotiating with governments and that sort of thing, these folks are looking elsewhere at this time. They're not looking in Honduras anymore. And I would say that there will probably be something for the very interested within 5 years. Again, and that thing will have a percentage chance of being successful, because the Free State Project has been successful, but there was a chance that it wasn't going to be, and it just happened that history went our way. The Ron Paul revolution started in 2008. Had it not, likely the Free State Project wouldn't be wouldn't be a footnote in history. And so, what'll happen in the future? It's difficult to say, and I never want anybody to invest their money in any of these projects on my say so unless I am sure. Um, but there's I think that true freedom, if we're going to create such a thing, and if such a thing exists, it's really difficult when talking to libertarians as to find out exactly what true freedom is. If it's going to be had, it's probably had outside the United States. Oh, and by the way, we're on the precipice of World War III, and at any time the Putin and Biden could let loose ICBMs, and it's Central and South America are good places to be then.
Oh that's the elephant in the room. I guess that's kind of why I was asking about that. But yeah, there would still be, you might have to grow different things than normal on a place like Utila, since the temperature would go down. But at least you could still grow things.
Yep. We also have, and greenhouses are relatively easy to put up these days too.
Yeah.
Other things that people can ask. I think it really comes down to, if I want to move right now to be more free, what can I do? Is the question that people sort of ask. There a lot of people are just fed up with the way things are. They want to be more free, and the first question is I've got to start asking, what do you define as freedom? Because there's the libertarian definition, which is you can do whatever you want so long as you don't harm other people. But there's another libertarian definition, which is that the person who owns the property gets to make the rules. So
Yes, King
all
Mark.
property is right, all property is owned by somebody else, and that person gets to make the rules. And is so long as you can live with their rules, whatever that might be, then that would work out. Otherwise, you're looking for, unused land that's never been anything's been done with, and maybe you can buy it for enough millions, and then maybe you can put some enough solar panels, and then maybe you can get, I don't know, a hog farm there, and it gets complicated. So almost everybody has to live on land that is fundamentally run by somebody else. And I like the libertarian ideas, but I think that there's, on the edges, things can get a little blurry as to what they mean. So if somebody asks me that, I ask them, what 3 or 5 freedoms do you need to feel free? And for different people, this is different things. I know people that need to be able to smoke marijuana to feel free, or they want to be able to drive their car really fast, or they want to be able to carry a gun on their hip. And there's my advice on where to move is different for those different people and what they might want. Some people can never possibly feel free in a New Hampshire winter, it's just too uncomfortable for them. And you can talk to them about heaters and all that stuff, but they just don't want to live like that. And there's other people that, the idea of not being able to get an Amazon package delivered in 2 days. Are you kidding me? Live like a savage? Um, you know, I think that people have to ask themselves what they're trying to achieve. New Hampshire should not be taken out of the equation, in my opinion, by anybody. But I think it's best suited for people who live in New England or some other cold climate. I'm willing to toss in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minneapolis and, all those places. And that they care deeply about sort of libertarian politics. And maybe they even want to run for office. And they pay probably exorbitant property taxes. If you fit that definition, if you live up north and you pay high property taxes, then New Hampshire, you'll probably feel freer than you currently do.
Yeah. It's the New Hampshire is the default, it's the Bitcoin, it's the OG, it's the thing that's proven, sort of
Would Bitcoin
established.
work though? If New Hampshire was positive towards Bitcoin, Kraken wouldn't have bought a bank in Wyoming. New Hampshire needs to work on its Bitcoin laws. It is not. It's free in so much as you can probably do whatever you want. But what these big Bitcoin companies want is they want structure. They want to say, okay, here's the rules. I can abide within the rules. New Hampshire has no rules, and so it's very strange. And don't forget that Ian Freeman recently went to prison for selling Bitcoin in New Hampshire. So I wouldn't call New Hampshire particularly free when it comes to Bitcoin and
Well,
crypto.
I just mean it's New Hampshire isn't so much the perfect place for Bitcoin. I wasn't saying that. It's just more like it's sort of
Okay.
in a political freedom geography sense, it's kind of like Bitcoin. It's the long proven thing in the 20-year range.
Hmm.
It's just it's not new and different. It's not the experiment anymore. It's the
Yep.
established libertarian move.
If you want to struggle for freedom, I still think New Hampshire is the place. Now that struggle is likely within the political system because the New Hampshire House definitely needs as many liberty-oriented Republicans as it can get.
Well, and of
And
course
I would,
you
if
can
I
be
were
one,
moving to
right?
New Hampshire,
It's not that difficult to become one, right? You just throw your name on the ballot and live in the
nope.
right town, and you become a state rep, basically.
It's exactly true. Move to the correct town, and you will be, you'll be a Republican with or a rep within a certain amount of years. It takes 2 years to be eligible to be a rep, and then, maybe you lose your first round, maybe you don't. Anybody who wants to find out more about running can email us, either of us.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Mark, I'm going to give you the 3 minute warning here. We have 3 minutes left, and if there's anything else you wanted to add that I hadn't asked you, and just also if we get cut off, which we will automatically, thank you for joining me. But what else would you like to what else would you like to add?
I think that when it comes to jurisdictions and liberty, we have to keep on trying new things. That's why I maintain my residence in New Hampshire. I'm a New Hampshire resident and I'm proud of it. But at the same time, I go around the world looking for different ways to expand people's freedom, personal liberties in whatever way. And I'm constantly looking for new projects just to know what they're doing, if nothing else. And those people that run those projects, from what I've seen, have been largely liberty oriented. So, um, there's the pioneers, and then there's those that come after the pioneers, and I try to keep a lookout for them.
Well, hopefully we'll have an asteroid or two, when Elon Musk fails at Mars and realizes that asteroids are easier or the moon is easier, we'll hopefully have a place close by, easy to reach by rocket, where a new political system can be born.
Well, if we're going to save planets, if we're going to terraform planets, let's start with this one.
Yeah, Earth is easier to terraform than any other planet.
Yep, and we're cut out for it. We are familiar with this environment. Our bodies are evolved for this environment, and there's going to be some big changes if we tried to live on Mars or even the moon. Venus is about the same size, but I don't know. The air is completely poison.
Well, it's more like the bottom of the ocean and at 600 degrees.
Yep.
All
Very
right.
good, Dave. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks,
I hope I
Mark.
get to
Yeah, it
talk to you
hasn't
again
been done
soon.
in a long time, and it is always fun to talk to you.
I'll be back in New Hampshire in next month. Next month.
All right. Muy bien. Y gracias.
Que bueno. Adios,
Okay,
amigo.
let's oh, I forgot how to say goodbye.
Adios will do.
Okay, that's right. Adios. Okay, talk to you later.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye. Do you value your privacy? Want hardware that works? Get Linux at New Hampshire's very own penguin.com.